Sean must be taking in at least 20 to 30,000 calories a day.
On my 600-pound life, the biggest battles aren't always with the food. Sometimes the real fight is against the people standing closest to you. Over the years, viewers have watched as husbands, wives, and even parents quietly sabotage the very progress they claim to support. From feeding patients mountains of junk food to actively discouraging their recovery after surgery, the patterns are hard to ignore. These moments show how toxic enablement can keep someone trapped in a body and a life they desperately want to change. As we look back at some of the most unforgettable cases, you'll see exactly how far some loved ones were willing to go. James and Lisa's toxic bond. James King's time on My 600-Pound Life remains one of the most heartbreaking stories to ever air on the show. His early years were shaped by one hardship after another: an absent mother, a father constantly battling financial troubles, and a devastating fire that wiped out everything he owned. Food became his constant companion, a comfort that was always there when life felt unbearable. By the time he appeared on Season 5, Episode 11, James weighed nearly 800 pounds and relied entirely on his wife of 25 years, Lisa, to get through each day. From the start, Dr. Now knew that getting James to a safer weight for bariatric surgery was going to be an uphill battle. He placed James on a strict diet, hoping that this would be the turning point. But instead of losing weight, James resisted the changes at every step. It didn't help that Lisa seemed unwilling or perhaps unable to stop enabling him. Rather than breaking old habits, she often appeared to feed into them. By the end of the episode, James had actually gained weight and failed to qualify for surgery. Things only got worse in My 600-Pound Life. Where are they now? James's weight climbed to a shocking 840 pounds. Even the involvement of Adult Protective Services wasn't enough to get the couple back on track. Dr. Now suspected Lisa was sneaking him food and confronted her multiple times, but she denied it. At one point, he asked her to leave James at the hospital for 5 days so he could see if James would lose weight without her influence. The couple refused, and Dr. Now's frustration finally boiled over. He accused Lisa of actively harming James by feeding his addiction to food. James was dropped from the program, but not before Lisa baffled viewers by claiming his body doesn't burn calories. Tragically, James's health never improved. On April 3, 2020, at just 49 years old, he passed away from kidney failure. Fans of the show have never held back their feelings about Lisa. On Reddit, when one user asked who the worst enabler was in the show's history, the top voted answer, with more than 100 upvotes, was simple: Lisa King. The comment even referenced the now infamous scene where James was wheeled into the hospital crying, "Aw, my leg!" Others piled on, with one viewer saying they couldn't tell whether Lisa was monumentally dumb or actively scheming to kill him with food. Some believed the blame wasn't Lisa's alone. One user pointed out that both James and Lisa had tragic pasts and suggested their relationship was abusive on both sides. According to them, Lisa may have been in a toxic relationship before meeting James, while James may have exploited her loyalty to get what he wanted. Still, others went further, suggesting Lisa's actions felt intentional rather than just misguided. No matter how you see it, James and Lisa's story stands as one of the most toxic and doomed relationships on My 600-Pound Life, one that may have cost James his life. No matter how toxic James and Lisa were, Sean and his mother took enabling even further. Sean Milliken's fatal dependency. Sean Milliken's story is one of the clearest examples of how enabling can destroy a person's chances of survival. By the time viewers met him in Season 4, Sean's weight had climbed so high that Dr. Now estimated he was the heaviest person alive at the time of filming, over 1,000 pounds. At first, Sean said he was seeking outside help to finally get his life back. But as the episode unfolded, it became obvious that the help he had at home was the very reason he was in this dire situation. Sean lived in California with his elderly mother, Renee, and his daily life was painfully limited. The moment he woke up, the most movement he could manage was shuffling to the edge of his bed to use a bedpan. That was it. Every other part of his existence, washing, feeding, moving, was handled entirely by Renee, who seemed perfectly willing to care for him in a way that kept him completely dependent. At 27 years old, Sean was living like a child, and not by accident. Many fans have pointed out that Renee infantilized him to the point of learned helplessness. He'd been bedbound for 8 years, ever since he was 19, a period that's hard to even comprehend for someone so young. Sean blamed a knee injury for his confinement, but it was Renee who kept bringing him meals and never pushed him to get up. And these weren't small meals. She catered to his every craving. She even kept a pen and paper nearby to jot down his snack requests, which happened so often it had become routine. Despite the fact that Sean needed 2 people just to bathe him, Renee still allowed him to eat as much as he wanted. She admitted that others had warned her that her behavior would end up killing him, but those warnings didn't change her approach. Sean himself compared the comfort of food to something deeply emotional, a comment that hinted at how his mind worked after years of being treated more like an infant than an adult. When Sean was finally transported to Houston to meet Dr. Now, his childlike dependency was on full display. In pain from simply being pushed in a wheelchair, he cried out in a way that sounded more like a frightened child than a grown man. The trip also revealed just how entrenched his habits were. He was eating fast food on the way, and at one point, he lost control of his bowels, forcing Renee to clean him up. The heartbreaking truth was that as long as she did everything for him, Sean had no reason to change. Food was both her tool for controlling him and the chain that kept him bound to his bed. His story ended in tragedy upon tragedy. In 2017, Renee passed away from kidney failure. Without her care, Sean was unable to fend for himself in even the smallest ways. Just 2 years later, at only 29 years old, Sean died from complications related to his weight. Sean's heartbreaking dependence on his mother showed how enabling can kill. Betty Jo's marriage revealed another side. Betty Jo's controlling caregiver husband. Betty Jo and her husband Josh brought a very different kind of toxic enablement to my 600-pound life. When Betty Jo appeared in season 3, she weighed 654 pounds, and right from the start, it became clear that Josh's behavior wasn't just unhelpful. It was deeply unsettling. One of the most disturbing aspects of their relationship was revealed early in the episode. Josh openly admitted that he feared losing Betty Jo to another man more than losing her to death. That mindset set the tone for everything that followed. It wasn't her health or her future he was most concerned about. It was keeping her dependent on him. When they met with Dr. Now, he didn't hold back. He called Josh out for his behavior and even suggested that his actions might come from a fear of losing control if Betty Jo gained independence. And it wasn't hard to see why Dr. Now reached that conclusion. Josh's enabling was obvious in their day-to-day life. Trips to the grocery store turned into free-for-alls, with Josh silently following Betty Jo around, adding whatever she wanted to the cart. At home, plates were loaded with fried foods like breaded chicken strips, and there seemed to be no limits. But there was a turning point, at least temporarily. Betty Jo started taking accountability, asking Josh to prepare healthier meals, and she began losing weight. Eventually, she qualified for bariatric surgery. It should have been a victory for both of them, but instead it sent Josh into a tailspin. Rather than feeling proud or supportive, he admitted he felt depressed by her progress. In his eyes, her improving health was damaging their relationship. Counseling sessions revealed just how deep this went. Josh openly confessed he didn't want her to lose too much weight because he feared she might leave him. It was a shocking admission, proof that his primary concern wasn't her survival, but his own sense of security. Betty Jo, for her part, voiced her frustrations. She felt that Josh wasn't motivated to help her and that he preferred things to stay the way they were. She recounted moments that left her questioning his priorities, like when he promised to stay at the hospital after her surgery but didn't follow through. For Betty Jo, these weren't just isolated incidents. They were part of a pattern that showed he was more interested in keeping her dependent than seeing her thrive. Josh himself acknowledged that her newfound mobility scared him. "I used to take care of her," he said. "Now she's starting to move around, and that really scares me because I don't want her to leave me." It was a startlingly honest confession, and it confirmed what many viewers suspected, that Josh's enablement wasn't born out of ignorance, but fear and control. Since the show aired, Betty Jo has reportedly lost more weight. And in a twist that surprised many fans, she's still with Josh, proving that some relationships, no matter how complicated, find a way to endure. Even with Betty Jo finding a way to move forward, Zalin's battle showed a harsher kind of sabotage. Zalin's husband sabotaged her life. Zalin's story should have been one of determination and change, but it was overshadowed by the toxic presence of her husband, Gareth. Viewers have called him everything from unsupportive to downright repulsive, and within minutes of seeing him on screen, it's not hard to understand why. Gareth openly admitted that he was attracted to women who were not just overweight, but extremely obese. In his own words, "Why settle for a hot dog when you can have a steak?" For him, Zalin's size was part of his personal preference, and he made no effort to hide it. While she weighed nearly 600 pounds and was motivated to change for the sake of her life and her daughter, Gareth was clearly uncomfortable with the idea of her losing weight. Zalin was capable of going to the grocery store herself, but Gareth encouraged her to indulge. She even joked about wanting to make love to sugary, high-calorie treats, and Gareth only fueled that mindset. He admitted that watching her get smaller was upsetting because it meant losing what he liked. The problem wasn't just his attraction, it was how far he would go to keep her exactly as she was. His behavior after her weight loss surgery was particularly shocking. Just one day after the procedure, instead of showing support, he made an insensitive call to tell her he was going to a taco stand, knowing she couldn't eat anything like that. Zalin hung up on him, and rightfully so. But his actions didn't stop there. When it came time to pick her up from the hospital, Gareth actually took her through a drive-thru on the way home, ordering burgers and fries and flaunting them right in front of her. It was the same enabling behavior that had contributed to her dangerous weight in the first place, and it came across as deliberate. He belittled the healthy meals she prepared for herself, calling them crap and even pretending to gag when she ate them. The message was clear. He didn't want her to change, and he was willing to sabotage her efforts to keep things the way they were. Viewers were outraged. In one Reddit thread with hundreds of upvotes, a commenter said they wanted to punch him throughout the episode, pointing out that Gareth seemed willing to sacrifice his wife's life and his daughter's mother just to satisfy his own sexual preferences. It was a sentiment echoed across fan discussions, with many calling his actions some of the most blatant sabotage they'd ever seen on the show. Thankfully, Zalin's willpower outshone his negativity. She stayed committed to her diet, shed a significant amount of weight, and eventually made the life-changing decision to leave Gareth. For her, the transformation wasn't just physical, it was about reclaiming her independence and refusing to let someone else's selfish desires dictate whether she lived or died. These stories prove that the wrong kind of support can be just as dangerous as no support at all. Which enabler's actions shocked you the most? Let us know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.